Welcome everyone to the second professional development webinar of the school year. Today's Wednesday, August 17th, and today we'll be talking about the Range Judging Career Development event. And so we're very happy today to have two speakers with us. Kristin Dickensen is with the NRCS and serves as a district conservationalist, and also is the state range judging committee chair. And so therefore is our contact in ag education to this particular event. There are a lot of updates with this event this year and a new pending handbook that will be updated as well. And so Kristin is going to talk us through that. Following that, David is willing to give us some of his secrets from West Holt in terms of how to take this event and integrate it into the coursework and curriculum and how to prepare students to find success at the regional and state levels. So with that, again, feel free to ask questions throughout, and I will turn it over to Kristin.
Okay, let's see. All right, is that what you guys want to see?
You haven't shared anything yet. You have to choose a screen and then.
I thought I did. Hang on here. Well, I'm not real sure where you went, Matt.
I'm right here. Jerome, while she's looking for that, can you hear us now?
I can.
All right, very good. Oh, and we have it now, Kristin.
Okay. All right. Are you guys seeing this on the side, all your pictures?
Nope, we're just seeing
okay.
It. Yep.
Okay. All right, so today what I'm going to do is just cover some of the changes in the range judging handbook. Unfortunately, as of today, it's still not out. We're waiting on it from the UNL publishers. As soon as it's out, I will email it out to the listserv, and we'll also get it posted on the range judging website, which I have listed later on in this presentation. So I know a lot of you think that sometimes change isn't a good thing, but it really is in this case. It was just time to do this for a lot of reasons. Some of the major changes we made are changing from the terminology of range sites to using ecological sites. The technical agencies that have used these and developed them over the years made this change over 10 years ago. It just took us time to implement these changes within our agency and then update the data behind it. All of the colleges and universities have made the change, and so it's just time to make the change now at our state judging level. A lot of the parts of the handbook that we updated were based on comments that we got from teachers and also the professionals that were involved with these contests. So hopefully it's more user-friendly to everybody involved. So the first major change that we did is we changed from using precipitation zones to using major land resource areas. There's 13 of those across the state of Nebraska, and these are characterized by more than just precipitation. Soils, patterns, climate, water resources, and land uses all kind of go into what makes up an MLRA. And then the guide that we use for determining similarity index, which is another new term, will be based on these MLRAs. A contest participant isn't going to have to choose which MLRA they're in. At the contest, they'll be given the appropriate guide, just like we did when we had the 4 precipitation zones previously. The other major change that we made is to using ecological sites. And an ecological site is a distinctive kind of land with specific soil and physical characteristics that differs in 3 different things. One is the ability to produce a distinctive kind and amount of vegetation, its ability to respond to management activities, and its ability to respond to disturbances. Our ecological site descriptions contain way more information than the old range site descriptions contained. We've added a lot of things like growth curves and animal information, wildlife interpretations, management interpretations, and things like that that we didn't have before. So it's just a better description of what's going on that particular landform. The official descriptions are found in NRCS's Field Office Technical Guide, which you can Google and get to if you want to see the official descriptions and what they are. Each description for each ecological site for each MLRA is probably about 20 pages. And so we've taken that information and compiled it and reduced it down into what we need for range judging purposes. As part of this, you'll see some name changes from the old range site names. Silty, anything with silty in it became loamy upland. Thin Luss is now Luss Breaks, and silty overflow is now loamy overflow. And that more closely matches the names used in these MLRAs. One of the things that we've done as an agency is standardize a lot of these names. But we've also simplified a lot of it for contest purposes. For range judging in Nebraska, loamy upland could include a loamy upland, a loamy tableland, and loamy plains, as different MLRAs have used slightly different names for basically the same kind of site. So, shallow is another example of one that carries multiple sites with it. So a shallow to gravel, a shallow limey, a shallow loamy, a shallow sandy, or a shallow clay site might all be involved in what we're going to use as just a shallow site. Again, all of those names are listed on the back side of the card where you do your similarity index part of the contest. The process for identifying an ecological site is exactly the same as what it was for determining what range site you were on. None of that's changed. You still look at the depth of soil, the depth to the water table, what kind of location you are on the landscape, what kind of slope you're on, the soil texture, and then also testing for effervescence. We also now are using similarity index instead of range condition. It's still very similar to what we did. We still compare the existing plant community that we've identified to a reference community. It's also expressed as a % of the total of end of season production. And we base this on air dry weight, not species richness within the plot that we use. The form that we're using for similarity index, the worksheet that the judges use is exactly the same as the one that we've used previous. So again, no major changes to the process. It's more a terminology change that we're dealing with here. Every so often, it seems like we have changes to our plant list. Here's a list of the changes that occurred with this update. I guess I won't read through all of those. A couple of them are going to be a little tougher to get used to, and we get a lot of yucca on the contest now, and so, or previous, and now that's the official name of small soapweed. So. At the request of a lot of people, instructors and people in the score room, we made some big changes to the cards that we use at the contest. We split the plant identification cards into 2 cards. So now there's not confusion, or less confusion on what they're filling out. Card A will always be plants 1 through 12. Card B will always be 13 through 24. The other thing we did is we went back to using letters instead of numbers for the plant characteristics. A lot of us felt like a lot of students were memorizing numbers instead of learning plant characteristics. And so we're hoping that going back to using letters helps them make that connection a little bit better to what they're actually learning. And then the other major change with the plant identification cards is that we will no longer determine the growth form for grass-like plants, so basically our sedges, which created some problems and confusion in the past. So we will only do it on grasses. And then our ecological site maps, the ranch of the question card, which was card 2, is now actually card C. And the big changes on that is, again, the terminology changes to using ecological sites and similarity index. On the similarity index, we changed it from 12% plus or minus for full credit to 10%. Again, that's 12% was just too big of a gap for us, and 10% is a lot easier to deal with and makes more sense in the field too. On the list of management questions, we removed relocate fence as a management choice on the ranch problem. That's another one that created some confusion, and realistically, it's not a management item that is economical at all to ever choose, and so we just eliminated it. So the total score of the contest went down by 5 points is all, with all of these changes, and that's because we removed that. As a note here, we also clarified the information in the handbook text about prescribed burning. We didn't change anything with it on the card itself, but we did clarify that in the text. And we also removed the information about mowing. Before, it was prescribed burning and mowing was together, and that's no longer the case. And then the last of the card C is that we removed the range condition, the good, excellent, good, fair, poor information from the back of the card, because that was never used on the card to help get an answer any place. So we've posted clean copies of the cards that you guys can pull up if you just want the card to use in your classrooms and use at your practice contests and everything. And that's what they look like for card A and card B, which are the plant identification cards. And then card C looks very similar to what it did before, and it's a front and back card like what we had previously. The other thing that we added to the handbook was a standard set of contest rules. We were constantly getting questions from local committees that set up these contests about, can they use clipboards, and can they do this, or can they do that? And so we kind of took a lot of this from the land judging contests and adapted it for range judging, and then added what we the other things that we felt was important to it. And so if instructors could make sure they go through those and understand them, and if they have questions, let us know. The local committees may add to these instructions if needed. You know, there may be an instance just because of the site that they need to add some rules or instructions, and they're certainly welcome to do that, but we want all of the contests to follow these basic set of rules. And then the last thing that we ask is, even if the instructors aren't participating in the contest, we ask that they follow these rules as well. So there's a couple more changes that we made as part of the handbook update. One is that we combined the adult and professional division. We didn't really see a need to split those anymore. We also needed to raise the minimum cost of registration from $2 per contestant to $3. This is because our cost of ribbons and cards is getting higher, and also the Society for Range Management is paying or is including us in a liability insurance policy, and by raising this minimum cost that's reimbursed to us, we can help cover some of those expenses. You may see a higher charge at a contest, and that's up to the local committee to decide if they need to charge a little bit more to help cover some of their expenses, like facility rental or porta-johns or something like that, if they feel they need to get those. And then the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to do awards just like we did in 2015. Our area contest ribbons will get to schools at the state contest, or we'll mail them to them if we need to. And then our state contest awards will be given at the state FFA convention. That just takes a lot of pressure off of the score room and being able to make sure that the results are correct when we present them. And also so schools don't feel like they have to stick around because they've all got extra activities in the evenings after these contests that a lot of them take off to go to anyway. So hopefully we're still able to do justice to recognizing our award winners though with that. And so if you need any additional help, one of the best places to start is to go to the Range Judging website. And again, it's listed here. And then also seek out the local professionals in your area, extension educators, NRD staff, NRCS conservationists. They're all great resources. And then the State Range Judging Committee is here to help you as well. We have members from all across the state, and so hopefully we can get one of them in touch with you too if you need additional help. So with that, are there any other questions?
I have one question on one of your plant changes.
Okay.
The lance leaf ground cherries, is that a different plant from common ground cherries, or is that just the name change?
It is a different plant.
Okay.
It's a different scientific name than what we had, and I haven't had the chance, David, to research to make sure it's not a scientific name change also.
Okay, that's fine.
It is
just
a plant.
double checking.
Yep. If that's different, though, I'll let you know.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions from the group? Jerome or Rachel? Rachel's poking her head out and said no. Well, very comprehensive, and Kristin, thank you and the committee work for everything you do to not only make these changes, but throughout each of the years to help coordinate and put on these quality events for our students. So feel free to stick around, but if you also have to move on to the next thing, we certainly understand as well.
No, I'll stick around in case there's any questions after David goes through his.
Okay, very good. Well, we will pass the torch over to David. It's all yours.
Okay. Let me get this where I want it. See if you're seeing what I see. Maybe I don't know where I'm at. Okay. There, that should be showing. Well, Matt's asked me to present some of the things we do here at West Holt. I've been teaching at West Holt this is my 6th year, 7th year, I don't know what it is. And in the last 23 years, I've had either a junior or a senior team or both win 20 times the state contest. So I feel like I have a few things to offer you. I don't know that we do anything unique, but I thought I'd go through kind of how I think range judging curriculum can fit within your curriculum. For starters, I think it could fit in any of these classes, and I know people that do multiple things that are in addition to, but an introductory class, certainly plant science or animal science class, and definitely a natural resources class. I have all of those classes at West Holt. I teach a 3-week unit to my freshmen or the intro kids, focusing mainly just on the plant identification and how to identify the ecological sites. We don't get much more into that. In the plant science class, we then which are sophomores usually for me, generally focus on the plant ID and how to evaluate the ecological sites, go a little more in depth. And then in animal science, I spent a couple of weeks. We do a lot of things that are not part of the range contest there. We focus on stocking rate problems, which is part of the MAP problem, and grazing management plans, which kind of hits the MAP and the event. My students will create their own management plan on a MAP. But I have a natural resources class, but we don't fit any of the range into that class. That's where we're at on those. I know teachers that will teach only to one class or will teach it to all periods. So whatever fits your needs. Now, resources, I think, is the key. Start with that handbook. If you're not using the range judging handbook, then your students aren't getting what's going to be at the event. Download it, and Kristin said she's going to be sending that out. But that's where the material is from to start with. There are other UNL publications for Plant ID and for grazing management that you can find on the UNL publication site. And there's a lot of other Plant ID books. And there's a lot of things on the internet. One thing we utilize a lot here is just materials from past events, especially when you get to things such as maps and questions. They haven't written a lot of new questions because in the last 20 years, because all the book has been written, had a part written about it. So if you can find old questions from other teachers, or if you can save those, then or maps, then you can use those as a resource in the future. One of their rules that they have in the list of rules Kristin shared was that teachers may keep the questions and maps. So you can keep those. They don't recycle them. They might write that question again or something similar, but you'll see a lot of the same information. And so that's a good resource. And I know within our district up here, District 10, we have teachers that go to 3 of the different range areas. We have teachers in range judging area 4, 5, and 2. And so we'll share those maps and questions with each other. And that way, so we have more. We also host an event here at West Holt for the district. We've hosted an event, a range judging contest for at least the last 20 years. And we usually have, I think last year we had about just shy of 200 students. So we create our own questions and maps there. So you have a lot of teachers out there that have experience. If you're a new teacher, for gosh sakes, ask people. For help on any parts of the event, I get during the 1 month of the range judging season, I would guess I probably get 2 or 3 emails on average a day on Plant ID. People email me pictures, and that's fine. I add those to my file of pictures. So I know there's other teachers you can ask for all sorts of information, so do that. And create your own material. Take pictures of plants and of ecological sites as you drive around the state or as you go to events, as you work on it in class, and create your own database of information. And that's what we've done. You can take plant samples, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I think the key part of the event, as far as I'm concerned, is plant identification, because you base all of what you do after that off of plant identification. If you don't know how to do the plants, you're not going to do the others efficiently. There's a list in the range judging handbook. Don't put down the names that you learned that are different. They won't accept them at the event. So it's not just knowing the plant. Because obviously you may call it small soapweed, or you may call just iron plant, but it's cutleaf iron plant. Or maybe you call it dotted gay feathers, but they just accept gay feathers. So you can't use alternate names. They will not accept those at most of the events. So use the name that's in the book. And if you're not sure if you're using the right name, go to the scientific name and compare with what you were using. I only teach formally 20 to 25 plants in class. And I know some teachers give me a hard time because our students know a lot of plants. But what I mean is we teach it and give quizzes over those, kids will pick up other plants as they go along. If you concentrate on trying to teach kids 50 or 60 plants, you'll never get through all the material. So the key part of identifying plants is understanding how to classify them. And so Kristin hit on this, was that students maybe are just memorizing numbers. If they don't know it's a grass compared to a forb, then it won't do them any good. They can't know how to identify the plant properly. So teach them how to look at those characteristics and classify them and find what makes that plant unique before naming it. What we'll do next week when I have our first lessons on it is we'll teach those freshmen what a forb and a grass-like and a shrub and a cactus are. And we'll go out and we'll just pick up plants and we won't give them names. And we'll come in and we'll find characteristics, say, oh, look at the nodes. Oh, look at the, the showy flowers, or look at the hollow stems, and or the woody stems, and we'll say, that's definitely this type of plant. Oh, I saw the nodes. It's a grass. Great. And what else is unique about it? And you ask the students to look for that, and they have to find details. Well, there's a bunch of hair all over the leaf. Okay, now you've got something that's different from the one beside it. Now you can start to eliminate choices. If you say, oh, it's a grass, well, now I'm not going to say annual sunflower. As someone who has graded contest cards for a lot of years in our contest, there's a lot of kids just write down random names. They don't know it's a grass, and they might write down something that makes no sense. So at least if they can understand it's a grass or it's a forb, they can at least, if they don't know the name, they can at least guess something that's in the right category. Maybe they'll get there. But make it fun. Use some sayings or some memory tools when you go through it. I know that there's several cute little things out there. So one of the most common plants out there is switchgrass. Everybody that teaches range judging teaches switchgrass probably, because it's from one end of the state to the other. And it's got hairy armpits. I was talking about having hairy pits. So at the leaf collar, on the blade of the leaf, there's a little triangle of hairs, looks like hair on the armpits. I always tell my kids, I said, boys, think of it this way. If the girl you're dating has hairy pits, you should switch. So that's switchgrass. And they always remember that. It's stupid, but they will always remember that. The seniors will say it. So silly things like that. There's some others. Come up with your own. Have the kids make one up. That's something you can do. Memory tools are efficient. So help them discover the similarities and differences so they can use a process of elimination. Start with the common plants in your area.
Hey, David, I'm going to interrupt you. Are you showing different slides? Are we still on the first slide?
Oh my gosh, I am showing different slides. Are you not moving it?
No, I don't think you shared the whole desktop or something.
Okay, I'll stop and redo it. We're good.
Okay.
How about now?
There we are. Okay.
I don't know what I did. Okay. Well, I didn't show much that was different.
Okay.
Except for now it won't work. There we go. Okay, so start with some common plants in your area. Sorry about that. There's a lot that are common across the state. If I don't know if anywhere in the state I wouldn't teach some of these plants here. If you can find goldenrod, western ragweed, either big or sand bluestem, depending on where you're at in the state, little bluestem, switchgrass, Scribner rosette grass, lead plant, blue and or hairy grama, Kentucky blue or sedges, I bet that list, if you taught your kids those, I bet those plants are all at almost every single contest you go to. It's just how it is. I imagine the last 25 or 6 years, I bet there haven't been hosting a contest and going to an area and a state each year. I bet there haven't been 3 events where little bluestem and lead plant weren't part of the plant line. It's just how it is. They are everywhere, and they're always on the plant line. And goldenrod, too. So teach some common ones. Then if your students, maybe they don't do great at the event, but at least those are plants they'll see. Maybe they'll recognize them in their own, in their own life. So I think that's important. I only teach 5 to 7 new plants each day. So we'll teach 5 to 7 new plants. I have an opportunity I can teach in the field I have a place outside my building where we can pick up plants. And we'll gather plants. We'll go over characteristics. We'll write those down. The next day they'll come back and they'll quiz over those. And when I do quizzes, I always give them hints. I hold the plant up and I say, this one has hairy pits. This one. And give those hints so that they learn to recognize them, not just on, oh, that was that third one and I memorized the name. You have to know the characteristics that go with it. And then we'll do another 5 or 7. So we probably only teach plant ID for, well, we do it for 4 or 5 days because we get to 20 and we quit. And we'll do a quiz over those each day, cumulative quizzes. So for on day 2, there's 10 plants. When it comes down to it, though, a student, especially freshmen, won't know all the plants at a contest. So I think it's important to teach them how to fill the card out. So if they look at a plant and they say, I have never seen that plant before, they can tell if it's a grass or grass like a forb or shrub or cactus. So put that on there. I always tell my kids, you should be able to score on that front card, which has whatever it has, 134 points, something like that. You should be able to score 3/4 of the points on that without knowing a single plant. You know if it's a grass or forb or shrub. If it's a shrub, you know it's a perennial. If it's a grass, it's probably a perennial. If it's a grass in Nebraska, it's probably a warm season. So just kind of look through your list and see those things. You know that you've never put down more than 1 biennial in any event because there aren't very many biennials. When I score our contest cards here from our district, lots of perennials and lots of people put down silly things. There's only 2 plants on the list grasses on the list that have stolons. So when you do growth form, you shouldn't be putting stolen unless you're doing red top and buffalo grass. So just things like that. Teach them how to fill the card out so that it makes sense. Use common sense. Don't just guess. And then I have a plant library of images and preserved plants for kids to look at. You can make your own plant library that way. What we do is we take plants, we put them on a piece of cardstock, and we just take clear packing tape and tape them down there nice, and you can 3-hole punch them and put them in a binder. Unless they're really a moist, fleshy plant, you can do it day 1. You don't have to press them or dry them. They will last for years. I have some plants that have been around for 10 years. A lot of those grasses, the blue grom and those, you can tape them in and they're good, and then you can have a little plant book to start with. Oh man. All right. So any other questions on plant ID? Plant ID to me is getting out in the field and looking at things and looking for details and things that are different. All right. I'm going to talk about ecological sites. Plant ID is tough, but so many points come on those sites. There's 3 of those ecological sites. They're worth 150 points. That's a lot of the event. With the event being worth whatever it is, 574 points. There's a lot of, with 150 of it's here, that's a lot of points. And students make silly mistakes if you don't help them out a little bit. There's 12 sites. I may tell them something different this year since we're going down in Lancaster County. But most of the areas where we go in the center part of the state, the West Holt kids are told they're not allowed to put clay or saline subirrigated. 26 years ago in a contest, I've never seen either one of those on a contest. So I tell my kids, if there's a clay there at a contest, I expect you to miss it. Now we're going towards Lancaster County. I know the area contest last year in that end of the state had it. There are saline subirrigateds in that end of the state. But help students understand what makes sense and what's common. Based on what you know about sites and how students can narrow them down, they should be able to narrow it down to 2 or 3 options. Nothing's more frustrating than seeing a student put sub-irrigated on a site and it's a choppy sands. They need to have common sense. So that one doesn't make much sense. But start with your water table and the soil texture. and then work the depth of the soils and slope and eliminate sites like a dichotomous key. I think that's how we do it. I think that's a good way to do it. Once we get to that point, you can double check by using the similarity index guide to make sure that you've got the right plants in that site. Those guides for determining similarity index will list the plants that are supposed to be in the site. And if none of those plants are there, you may have the wrong site. And then I'm going to show another slide here in a second. But we go out for practices. If you take your students out, you're able to go to a site and you're not sure about it, you can use it's called Soil Web. It's an app for your phone, and it uses the NRCS web soil surveys, and it will tell you within 3 feet of what the ecological site is you're standing on. As long as you have phone service and you can get GPS, it will go to the ecological site. And so when you're teaching your students that, you can teach them the correct sites if you're unsure yourself. It'll tell you the soil textures. It will tell you the depth of the soils. It'll tell you the slopes. And so you can double check yourself with those if you're unfamiliar with some of those. I don't know if anyone else has used those.
The one thing I would caution you on with Web Soil Survey, though, is it's only as good as the original soil survey.
Correct.
And different counties were done at different scales and at more detail. And so there may definitely be some soil series that are complexes. So you may be on one of 2 range sites or ecological sites, something like that. So use caution with them. Use them as a place to start, but don't take them as nothing but the truth either.
Certainly. And we haven't had any trouble whole county, and I know our soil survey's pretty in-depth and good. So, but you're right. Yeah, use that with caution. This page that I pulled up here is what I use to teach my students in class. It's a site key that we created. You can see where we start. It's just a dichotomous key. And so I start with this, I guess I start with soil depth. So if you walk to a site and there's less than 20 inches of soil, and I'm not going to go through the whole key, but then obviously you don't need to worry about anything else. You don't need to texture the soil, any of that. And if students understand that, then they can make wise decisions and not look silly. I know every year, well, for example, in Scottsbluff, there was a shallow site. 10, 12 inches of soil. There's kids testing with the hydrochloric acid to see if it bubbles for effervescence, and it's irrelevant. And texturing the soil, it doesn't matter. So you have to know what's important about each site. And so you can work on there. If it's not a shallow site, you look for depths of the water table. And if it's the water table's deep, then you need to start texturing soils after that. And you'll get down to some of these. So you should be able to tell if it's within the sands or choppy sands, or if it's loamy upland or loamy overflow, or some of those you'll be able to tell. And if you're stuck between 2, that's when I say you can go to the guide for determining range condition, or determining similarity index. I'll jump right here. Here's my page. So sometimes it's hard to tell between, this is a bad example here, between wetland and sub-irrigated, because the water tables overlap each other. But they have vastly different, greatly different plant communities. And you can see what is available in that plant community, or should be, on these guides. So therefore, use the guide to help you pick the site name. And I don't think very many people do that. When it gets to sandy versus choppy sands and sands, that won't be as helpful. Kristin already hit on this similarity index, so I probably won't talk about it very much, but I will tell you a shortcut method I teach my students. And maybe that's harmful or maybe it's not. But as you teach your students the similarity index, which they're going to go in that plot, they're going to figure the percentage of plants. First, you figure out what plants are there or plant groups. Maybe it's just native perennial forbs as a group. You don't need to know the names of the actual plants. And the percentage of those plants there based on their weight. And that gets to be a hard concept. So I explain to students, if there's 20 or 30 little blue stems, blue grommas, let's go with blue gromma, and one big blue stem, the big blue stem is probably in there at a greater percentage because it just weighs that much more. It's a bigger plant. So you have to keep that in mind. I have students practice on paper with numbers I give them so that they understand the procedure, and then we go in the field and do it together. This is the hardest one because it's estimating. And my juniors in the animal science class will go out and we'll clip and weigh, dry and weigh, and we'll do a stocking rate based on that. Maybe it'd be best if I did that if we had time with the freshmen first, but that's the only way you get accurate. Since on the card, when they come up with a number, they'll come up with a number, it matches 80% of the reference plant community. So 80 is the number they'll write down. But sometimes a student gets 5% or 95%. My students, I always tell them, don't write a number down that's higher than 90 or lower than 10. All correct answers will fall between 10 and 90 because it's plus or minus 10. So I tell my students, if you get 85 or 95, I'd probably write down 85. They just give themselves some more leeway. Now, if the right answer is 97, they're going to be in trouble. So you kind of have to play with it a little bit. But if your student's writing down 95 or 6, they're giving themselves less leeway for correct answers. That's just a contest hint, I guess, as far as how to get a bigger range. The other thing I would say on these determining the ecological sites is they're going to give you this guide like you see here for your specific major land area, resource area. And not all sites are in all resource areas. And this is 63B. I don't even know what it is. But this 63B only has 5 possible sites. So they won't be selecting a site. They won't be having a wetland site. There won't be choppy sands. So tell your students not to write down a site that's not on the guide for determining some similarity index. I've seen that before where students will do it. I heard a student ask last year at state at Scottsbluff, how do I figure the range condition on this? They asked a site judge because the site's not on this guide because there's one of the out at Scottsbluff, there was one of the sites that wasn't on the guide. Well, hint number 1 should have been, it's not that site. So does that make sense to everybody? Hopefully that's helpful. The more you can practice these, the better, because this is the part that's toughest for kids to understand. I don't know if you want any other hints on that. I didn't put anything here specific about the degree of use, but we can just talk about that briefly. On the degree of use, they'll be clipping two flagged areas in the corner of the site, or sometimes outside of the site, depending on the specific situation. And you have to compare how much has been used from what's not been used at all. So it'll be an unused area and a used and a grazed area. That there is a matter of using the key indicator species. So if it's a loamy upland site, you should be looking for big blue stem and switchgrass and Indian grass. How do you know what the key indicator species are? Well, they're going to be on this guide we have right here on the screen, the plants with the highest numbers. So on a loamy overflow in 63B, key indicator species is big bluestem. That's the plant that should be in the greatest percentage in that site. So I want to start with those plants and see how much of that's gone, and then see if the animals graze down to the next area. That's hard to explain on a webinar. Talk to those range conservationists at the events. Use those events for training too. Don't just say, oh, this is it. We came to this contest, it's over. Stick around afterwards, talk to the conservationists, ask them how they got the numbers they got. They'll stick around and explain to your students. And then your students will be better off down the road. Whether they're going to another event or not, they'll understand it better. They're always willing to help, unless you get too crabby, and I try not to do that too much. So just don't argue with them, just ask them for help. Now, when you get to the mapping questions, there are examples in the handbook that are nice. They're nice examples for the map and some questions, kind of give you an idea. But if your kids have read the handbook or you pick out some questions from it, then that's where the questions come from. There's always a couple questions on plant classification. How can you tell a grass from grass-like? There'll be questions always on the sites. There'll be questions about the area you're in a lot of times. But I would say go through and ask and read through those questions. My students, we don't have it assigned to do the whole book, obviously. It's too much in 3 weeks. But we will pick out areas and say, read through this and make up 10 questions. And so if they can pick some questions out themselves, they have an idea. If you teach them plant classifications and the ecological site descriptions, that'll get them so far in the questions. They'll be able to handle that. Previous events is the greatest way to go. You're going to have to go back and adjust for the name changes, but it won't be that big a change. I bet in year one here of the new changes, there's going to be so many questions about ecological sites and their descriptions and how to work through it, because it's a new part, and that's where you get new questions. If your students don't know that, they'll miss some questions. Those questions are worth 5 points each. That's 50 points. Those are pretty easy 50 points. Your students should be able to get 40 of them if you really work at it. Sometimes they're really hard, though. I know there were some really hard questions here at some of these recent area and state events. When you're doing the map and the stocking rate problem on there, make sure that you look in your handbook for the formulas to figure the stocking rate problems. The animal units per head, the number of animals, the months grazed, the AUs per acres, the number of acres. Know those formulas that are given to you in the book and how to figure those. And make sure students aren't fooled by the extra points or extra information that's given, because they'll give all sorts of extra. They'll tell you how many acres in his paddock and that he rents it for this amount and he does this and that, and what he does in the winter. Just pick out they have to learn to pick out the information that's important. The stocking rate problem is worth 50 points, and they have to do it without a calculator. So my advice would be to have students practice stocking rate problems without a calculator. You'll get some grumbling in class. We're going to do these 10 stocking rate problems together. Put your calculators away. You have to do it on paper, because they'll have a pretty short period of time. They'll have 10 minutes to do the map and the questions. So they have to be able to think pretty quick, but it's multiplication and adding and subtracting. So they should be able to handle it as freshmen enough. There's a whole series of management questions. When you look at old maps, if you have the answer keys to those, you should be able to figure out the majority of those. And there's information in the Range Judging Handbook gives you an idea of when you should do which and what's important. My rule of thumb is always, if you're not sure, just mark no. It'll bite us sometimes, but 90% of the time, there's a lot more no's than there are yeses, unless a map is really giving us fits. Now that Kristin heard me say that, I know at state this year it's going to be all yeses. But that's kind of how we do things. we spend some of our time in class. Upperclassmen that don't get it, my juniors get it for a little bit of time, but not a lot of the contest material. Seniors don't get this material in class at all. They come in, they have their own old materials. They come in study halls. We do 2 or 3 evening practices after football and volleyball practice in the field where we set up our event. And then we host our own contest here for the district. So that's another one. The more times kids get to see things and stick around after and hear what mistakes they made, the better off they are. When you go to those area events, if you don't just get on the bus and go eat lunch, if you go walk through the plant line and see it, students remember the plants they missed. It's okay to miss plants. They'll understand maybe if the conservationist explains why they named a site what they did. So my suggestion is always stick around. You can look around and see who's still at the contest site for the area events afterwards, and it's usually the ones that are going to get the ribbons. So you have to put the time in. I think it's valuable for kids whether they do well at the event or not, if they try. I always tell my students, you may not ever have to manage range, but you probably live maybe in the Sandhills, or maybe you'll be working at a bank and need to give a loan based on land. You need to understand it. It's okay. You can have a conversation with someone down the road too. So I would love to have a question or two. I kind of flew through that, but I talk fast anyway. Any other questions on it? I don't know what I missed.
Jerome and Katie, do you have any questions? If so, you'll have to unmute yourself.
David.
I know Katie has questions because she sends me several plant pictures every year.
Very good. Jerome, you can go first.
No.
David, can you share that PowerPoint that you used?
Oh, share this presentation? Sure.
Yeah, David, if you don't mind, I'd like to, especially since we missed the first couple slides, I'd like to just link it as a downloadable link right next.
Yeah. There's nothing secret in there. I probably have given all this to Jerome once.
It takes me a little more than once, David.
And Jerome sent me pictures too.
Indeed.
Yeah, we'll link it right beside the archive video, but if you want to send it to him personally.
I'll send that to you. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Keep your questions coming. And there's a lot of other people in the state that are range experts and love to answer your questions. I know that. So feel free to ask.
I missed the beginning with the ecological sites. And I'll watch the archive and look back at it. But
as far as the changes?
There's no, on the ecological sites.
You want to know what was changed?
There's nothing about wildlife. Oh, go, what was that?
Well, really,
there's nothing about wildlife, is there?
No, you're not going to do much different. The sites have a little bit more in-depth description on them on the new ones. Kristin went through the changes in the names, but your silty is now loamy upland, and your thin loess is now loess breaks, and your silty overflow is now loamy overflow. But you're going to do a similarity index just like you did range condition. And so there's really, we're not doing it like the national contest or the South Dakota one where you do an evaluation for range, for habitat. It's still the same.
That's right.
Okay.
On the plant tables in the handbook, there is information about a plant suitability towards wildlife habitat, and that is something that could come up in the 10 questions,
right.
But it's nothing that's going to be evaluated on the contest in any other location like they do at nationals.
Right. And that information was on that
Okay.
plant table before. That's not a change.
Okay. I can look back at that too. I missed
Okay.
the beginning, so.
All right. Yeah, if you have questions, I'm sure when Kristin has time, she can answer things, and I'm certainly willing to. So, all right.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks.
Well, Kristin, are there any closing comments that you would share, given David's presentation and what you heard from our ag teachers?
No, I think he did a good job of covering a good approach to teaching a lot of information in a really short period of time. You know, you need to keep in mind that there are people who go to school to get a 4-year degree in this stuff, and we're trying to teach it to freshmen in 2 to 4 week time period. And so you do have to realize that sometimes you need to take some shortcuts to make teaching and learning easier. But like David said, it's an important resource in the state of Nebraska, and a lot of these students will be surprised at how much they use later on in life after they're out of high school and done range judging.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank both of you for taking time to prepare and present this for our teachers. This will be archived on both the NEAGED and the Range Judging website. And so we'll also post David's document next to that, as well as a downloadable link as well. So if there are no more questions, I think we'll call this session adjourned. So thank you both very much.
Okay, thank you.